Call to order the special joint meeting of the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission and Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led tonight by Commissioner Shelley Hayes.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1A, presentations by the roll call.
Chairperson Seals,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Kloss, Commissioner Hawkinson,
Here.
Commissioner Hayes,
Present.
Commissioner Altamirano,
Present.
Commissioner Clower,
Here.
Commissioner Volkar,
Present.
Commissioner Branneman. Okay, from the Parks Commission, we have Chairperson Nickel, Vice Chairperson Price,
Here.
Commissioner Castillo,
Here.
Commissioner Clayton, Commissioner Hargrove,
Present.
Commissioner Levy,
Present.
Commissioner Folk, and Commissioner Ahmad. Thank you. We have a quorum for the arts. Actually, let's see. We have a commission on both commissions. Sorry, quorum on both commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1A, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission. This commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues on the agenda brought to them at this time. If you'd like to speak, fill out a request to speak and have it to the clerk's desk. And I don't see any request to speak. Moving on to 1B, commission communications. Commissioners, communications related to your role? Nope. Item 2, introduction of Summer Steps Program. Trend Bender.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Trent Bender, and I am an intern for the City of West Sacramento's 2016 Summer Steps Internship Program. I work in the Administrative Division of the Parks and Recreation Department. I'd like to begin by thanking Cindy Tuttle, Anna Padilla, Sam Cooney, Dina Kirtley, and Dan Anderson for helping me throughout my internship. I'd also like to thank the other selected interns who helped prepare and facilitate tonight's Stone Lock event. I'm excited to introduce to you the Summer Steps program, LRNG program, and my experience. STEPS stands for Strides Towards Entering Public Service. It's an 8-week internship that provides a hands-on work experience for students pursuing a career in public service. There were over 700 applicants that applied, and only 20 were selected. I'm very proud to be one of them and stand before you tonight. The LRNG program is a new learning technology that manages the STEPS internship. It's comprised of learning experiences called XPs. This program is designed to challenge and engage interns and prove what they have learned. The goal is to acquire LRNG badges. Once we complete the internship, we will receive a certificate of completion, and we will be able to link our LRNG badges to both our LinkedIn and resume. I believe the LRNG platform is efficient and revolutionary in learning. Some examples of my badge requirements include interviewing city staff members, providing written accounts and pictures, helping with special events, and also presenting at a commission meeting. Additionally, I assist with administrative duties, research projects, financial processes, website editing, and even tree maintenance. I first became interested in this program because the Parks and Recreation Department is consistent with my values. As a resident here in West Sacramento, I enjoy direct involvement with my community, and I feel that I have contributed in a positive way, and that building the community, parks, and learning definitely make life better. My favorite event of the program was the Joey Lopes Park opening, and my favorite part of the week is learning about the city's trees with our urban forest manager. I enjoy being a part of an organization that builds the community one document, one event, meeting, park, and purchase order at a time. And I feel really good about my experience with the internship. In conclusion, the STEPS internship has elevated my knowledge, skills, and time management, and I have strengthened my abilities to plan my work and work my plan. I believe it's an exciting time to live, work, and play in West Sacramento. I am happy and honored to be a part of this amazing opportunity. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Nice job. Any commissioners, do you have any questions? Do you have a moment, Trent, that you could
I do.
answer any?
How long is the program?
It's 8 weeks, I guess.
So what's next on your plan?
My plan is to work here in the Parks and Recreation Department for the city of West Sacramento.
Excellent. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are no items on this evening's consent agenda. On the regular agenda, item number 3, update on the Pioneer Bluff Reuse Master Plan, lock facility reuse, flood protection, and recreation opportunities. Katie Yancey.
Good evening, Commissioners. Many of you look familiar because we were just at the open house that we had at the lock facility. I'll keep my comments very brief since a lot of what I'll be going over for the benefit of the public was what we discussed at the open house. And primarily the purpose of this commission meeting is to seek guidance, particularly related to the parks and open space approach that I'll be going through in my presentation, and then to also seek guidance on the recommendations that are contained in the staff report, which I will review for the commission in this brief PowerPoint presentation. So in terms of context, the city is in the process of preparing a reuse master plan for the Pioneer Bluff and Stone Lock area. In 2014, the city approved something called the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan. It was an economics study to look at what were the costs of transitioning the Pioneer Bluff area into its zoned mixed use, which is riverfront mixed use. And it concluded that if we achieved similar build-out densities in the Bridge District, that it was financially feasible to cover all of the backbone infrastructure that was needed to support that type of development. In 2015, based on that work, we received a Strategic Growth Council grant for about $400,000 to prepare a reuse master plan, coupled with some money that was appropriated out of Fund 106. We have about a $1.1 million budget to prepare this reuse master plan. The first task is to amend the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan to include the Stone Lock area, which was excluded from the original document, as well as to bring those economics up to date. We're conducting an existing conditions assessment at a greater depth than was done before, and part of that was looking at the locks facility and looking at the role that it plays in flood protection. So we're going to be bringing that amendment forward to the council in the fall. And so we're just coming to these different commissions and letting you guys know where we are in the process and what role that you will have moving forward. Because ultimately what we're looking at is a 2018 timeframe for adopting this reuse master plan, which essentially will function as a land use document that includes a financing plan and will be tiered off of the general plan's EIR document and function as a planning overlay, as sort of that first step in really transitioning the property. In 2005, the general plan deemed that all those industrial uses were non-conforming, but that was sort of the last policy direction that those property owners received in terms of transitioning their property. So we've created a TAC, and we're working with those property owners to figure out what's the path forward and what would those timeframes look like. This is just one of the posters that we showed. This is a view from the oversight building of the locks facility. I'm just going to quickly run through this for the benefit of the public. Another view facing Jefferson and the Watchtower building. Lovely photo taken by one of our interns in our STEPS program of a sunset at the locks. A poster about the history, which is quite telling. It's one of the only navigation locks in the state of California, and it was constructed post-World War II. It's part of our Deepwater Ship Channel. We talked a lot about flood control and the role that the Stone Lock facility plays in flood control. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but essentially we're looking for direction on how we should proceed in integrating flood control with recreation, and then preparing for the reuse master plan, which is my main objective being in front of you this evening. So this is our approach. This is our tentative approach to doing open space and parks planning for the Pioneer Bluff and Stone Lock areas, and I thought I'd walk you through these different facilities as I'm seeking guidance on how we should be pursuing these. So items 1 and 2, those are a neighborhood park that's been planned since 2005. It's a relocation of a previous neighborhood park that was located where the Lowe's is now. And the trail, which exists now, which was funded by a previous Prop 50 grant, that's the Barge Canal access area. And it's one of the few areas that you can walk in to access the property. So we see a lot of kayakers out using this facility. This property is owned by the Port of West Sacramento. It recently issued an RFP for developers to look at developing this site, and that RFP closes today. It is our intent to program these park spaces with the larger park spaces so that they're interconnected. And we'll be working with whatever developer is selected to maintain that trail facility, perhaps enhance that trail facility, and then program that 3.8 acre site that's located on number 1. Moving to number 3, that's the Stone Lock facility, which many of you were out at today. I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail with the next slide, but we really want to focus our attention over the next couple of months on how we might reuse that facility and look at some of the technical complications associated with reusing that facility and what are some of the recreation opportunities attached to that. Park number 4 has also been assigned as part of our general plan. It's a continuation of an existing neighborhood park, which you see to the west, and it's zoned for parks and recreation, so it's one of the few parks that we have up here that's actually zoned for that use. Number 5 is an extension of the Bridge District Riverwalk Trail. It's included in the Riverfront Parks Master Plan, the 2003 Bike Ped Trail Master Plan. A big component of looking at that trail is understanding where the flood setback is, and one of the recommendations that we have in front of these commissions today is to advise staff to proceed with that lengthy process of identifying where that flood setback is and to expend those resources to work with our state regulators to identify that flood setback. And the number 6 exists today. The Army Corps of Engineers completed an improvement to that levee system. There's a flood setback, and we maintain a 30-foot public access right-of-way easement on top of the crown of the levee, and it is our intent to convert that into a trail once Village Parkway is constructed. So this is our general approach to parks and open space that we would like to move into our visioning phase. Our visioning phase will include more programmatic information about each of these parks and identify general costs and timelines for implementation. And we're seeking direction from the commission, if they have any direction for staff, about how we should be pursuing, prioritizing, or any ideas about the programming for these facilities. For a moment, I'd like to focus on the one that we had an opportunity to look at today, which is the Stone Locks facility, and talk a little bit about the features that are there. So number 1 is the Watchtower. The Watchtower is a 3-story building. It's not ADA accessible. It has asbestos and lead paint in it, so it will require a lot of remediation, but it has potential for reuse. It's also a historic structure, so we'll need to investigate what the implications are for reusing that facility. Item number 2 is the observation deck, where those pictures were taken from. It's also a 2-story structure, although the second story is the roof, and it's an observation deck that would be made available to the public. It's where public restrooms are, so we're encouraging reuse of that facility and bringing it up to current code and ADA compliance. Number 3 are the locks facilities themselves. They're the actual navigation locks. We are proposing to roll those locks back in order to look at what the impacts are for water quality as part of an enhancement to number 4, which is the bulkhead structure. That's the floodgate that provides flood protection for the deep water ship channel. So 3 and 4, programming 3 and 4 would come together. So this would be that recreation opportunities weighed with flood protection. 5 is the control watchtower, the boat that you all got an opportunity to see, as well as the crane, figuring out what we're going to do with that, trying to maintain the integrity of that historic use. And then 6 is that outbuilding, that gigantic concrete outbuilding that has a lot of potential, has good bones. And so we're trying to figure out what to do with that facility. So those are those components of Stone Lock. And so one of the recommendations that we have before this commission is to conduct a public access and safety inspection, sort of put together a plan for what it would take to rehab those buildings, bring the public to a portion of the facility, and also to determine what we should do with items 3 and 4 to open up alternative flood protection opportunities so we can enhance recreation. So next steps. As I mentioned earlier, the council will be seeing an amendment to the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan, which will contain this more robust discussion about existing conditions, so the council is aware of these multitude of considerations that they'll need to be weighing against each other, because there's always trade-offs when you're doing infill development, limited resources. Also in the fall, we're trying to bring forward contract awards, so we want to start our solicitation process, and we would do that with these commission's blessings. And then in winter, we would like to commence our open space and parks visioning process. That would involve similar meetings like we had today with the public, bringing forward landscape architects, hiring landscape architects and other parks planners, similar to what we did in Washington, and bring the public out and look and see what are the needs that they need in the area, what are they looking for in terms of parks and open space. And then once we've concluded that, coming back to this commission with our findings and asking for your recommendation for approval to our city council, so we can bring those ideas forward into our financing and land use plans for the adoption of the reuse master plan in 2018. I appreciate your patience and letting me go through all of this, and thank you all for coming out and standing in the sun for an hour and looking at our unique facility. With that, I'd like to turn it over for any comments, guidance, or questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Could I ask a couple of questions before the, just clarification?
Absolutely.
The reuse master plan, is that specific to the Stone Locks, or does that include Pioneer Bluffs?
It covers both.
Both. And is that part of the general plan update? Or
It
is that
is-
its own document?
It's its own document. It's funded by a Strategic Growth Council grant, so it'll be like a specific plan.
$400,000 grant, gotcha.
It'll be like a specific plan, but we're not specific plan ready. We have a lot of stuff we have to do first.
And so the EIR then will happen when you adopt the final reuse master plan?
We will do a limited EIR that will be tiered off of the general plan EIR. Will be consistent with the general plan. We'll do a limited EIR that covers what would typically be seen as like frontage covering like things like a frontage requirement or an outline for a development agreement, putting in place things like what might be a tentative widening project that we might have on South River Road to do interim improvements, looking at maybe constructing Stone Boulevard. So it would be all improvements that are already contemplated in the general plan, but we'd be running them to ground. What's the correct time frame? What's the financing? What are the property rights that we need to acquire? So that would be the type of document that would be attached to the reuse master plan.
And the parks that are in your diagram, you said they'd already been planned. Are they part of the Parks Master Plan, the original old Parks Master Plan, or is this the?
We're deriving from different components of the existing advisory documents that are out there, and we're also deriving from some direction that we've received from the general plan. The one piece that we would need to address, and going through each park, Dan, could you please bring up that slide that shows each park so I could address Chairperson Seal's comments? I think this will help in my answering your question. So park number 1 a resolution was passed in 2005 by the City Council and the Redevelopment Agency that relocated that park. So that was direction that we received from those bodies. Park number 2 was a grant that we received to do some improvements. Subsequently, when this property was owned by the redevelopment agency, we recorded an IOD saying that the city is going to maintain this facility and we're going to enhance this facility. So that direction came.
That's the existing trail?
That's the existing trail. That direction came subsequent to the improvement to the barge access canal, when we said we're going to protect our rights to this facility. That happened in 2011 with a city council and successor agency action. Park 4 is included in the general plan. That's a zoning designation. 5 is included in the park, the bike ped trail master plan and the riverfront master plan. And 6 is something that has not really shown up very much. It might be in the bike ped trail master plan, but it's something that we made sure that we reserved as part of the FEMA's improvement to the levee. 3 is the one that's kind of new. The general plan does not show this facility as a park. It actually shows a park that's just south of that. And so we would be asking the general plan to shift that zoning up to be the parks facility. This idea came about because the facility used to be owned by the redevelopment agency. And when the redevelopment agency was dissolved, we set about trying to protect that facility, not only because it offers an important piece of the city's flood protection system, but it also has all of these unique opportunities to preserve our history. So that also occurred in 2012, and it was completed in 2015 when the city took possession of the lock.
And so park number 3, this new opportunity around the locks, does that then, in a plan, years ago, there was a plan for a regional park and funding for regional park. Does this help, which doesn't, in an opinion, doesn't seem like the best use of funding for big grassy area? Is this instead of that? Does this help, do these parks, is that instead of, and I think it was closer to the port, as I remember. But
I think the document you're referring to is the 2003 Parks Master Plan, which talks about a Central Park concept. That Central Park concept had a lot of other things in it, like baseball stadiums, baseball fields and soccer fields. And the economic return that is associated with the Stonelock property is substantial. And when I brought the item forward to the Economic Development and Housing Commission, that contained sort of some property tax projections. And I want to say it was somewhere in the range, and I apologize if I'm getting the numbers wrong, but it was somewhere in the range of like $900 million was the economic benefit attached to developing this site. So what we've tried to do is balance that economic reality and what we would want to bring into the city in terms of property tax with that Central Park concept. And so this is our interpretation of balancing those two issues, which is keeping the site developable, but also maintaining some of these really unique opportunities for open space and recreation.
right, excellent. Commissioners, questions?
Got a question down here.
Hi.
Right there where number 1 is, okay, actually, that whole site in there all the way up to, where you got 1 and 2, the whole thing that goes all the way down to Jefferson, that was at one time considered maybe a regional park. Okay, that they were looking at that, because right now you have access getting in there for fishing and so forth now. But at one time, we had that, so that whole area was supposed to maybe become a regional park, like she was talking about, and that's probably where she got the idea from there. Now, what you showed us today, is that the only options you guys have as far as making that a 200-year flood protection? I mean, is there anything that's actually making the levee, actually putting another levee up there at all? Or why isn't that an option?
It's not an option because we haven't done that work yet. One of the things that we're seeking from these two commissions is guidance on proceeding with the additional work that's necessary to research alternatives to just doing a fix-in-place solution. So we're seeking guidance from the commission to.
It just seems like that fixing in place is still going to cost quite a bit of millions of dollars. I mean, since we've been doing a lot of levee work in that area, it seems like, that might be looked into too. That's my opinion, so.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions, feedback, ideas?
Years ago, the Stonelock, there was a company, the Stonelock Development. There was a lot of ideas that came out of that as far as renderings for how to use that space. Is all of that information still being considered for developing that area, or are they completely out of the loop on?
Talking about the Cordish development?
Yes, Cordish, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you referring specifically to the Stone Lock area that Cordish was proposing?
Yeah, I mean, whatever happened with all that?
They were proposing to put a movie theater, so we're looking for bigger, better ideas
Yeah.
than a movie theater, to be frank.
I think their ideas were bigger than just the movie theater, but I mean, as far as like how they were going to reuse the lock structures and stuff, I mean,
That option agreement actually excluded the lock structure.
Okay.
So they had talked about, to the south of 3, putting in a commercial district, and their big anchor was a movie theater.
sure.
So
It didn't include any of the lock structures?
it didn't, because at the time, we were trying to make sure that the flood protection piece was covered.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mine's really more of just a comment, a personal opinion. Matthew Harger with the Parks Commission. I love all the ideas I heard from the city today of keeping the historical integrity of that site. There's a lot of parks in San Diego and New York and Boston that you go to that keep the maritime kind of feel. They take the old structures, they make them so you can get in there and it's safe for the public, but really just kind of freshen up the place, make it look like it once did, and make it safe so people can walk around there, put in some nice grass. So I really like hearing that is kind of on the forefront of the mind of parks. For me, as somebody who's grown up in West Sacramento, that has a lot of history, and that I've driven by it 9,000 times, but that's only the second time I've ever actually been on the property, and the last time I had to hop the fence. So it was in the 80s. So I really like that the city is thinking of doing that and really taking it back to the historical integrity. I think that they would be so neat if we could ride our bikes through there and it looked like a facility that is used for wartime to move ships around or get grain out of here or whatever it was for. And then as we tie that stuff in with our other parks, I just think that would be a fantastic thing if we can keep that feel of the industrial nature that West Sac has always had growing up here. So I really liked hearing that. The earth and dam idea was mentioned earlier, that the Corps of Engineers, that's their solution, is to drop a bunch of dirt there. That would be the easiest solution. But I know that a piece of this is to figure out what's most efficacious there, what works for us as a community. I don't know anything about nothing out there, except in my heart it tells me somehow keep some water to be able to move through there. Whether or not we're opening that thing all the time or not, I don't know.
I don't
But
think it's not operational, is it?
It's not operational.
It's been operational for a while.
But it just feels like something that keeps the water moving back and forth somehow, or allows boats some sort of access, and not just sealing it off for all times, seems to be what I would love for the city to pursue and look into that. So thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to get out there and take a look at it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Commissioners?
And I just want to make a comment. Being out there, thanks for the invitation, by the way, I heard a lot of excitement. And so just to echo what Commissioner Hargrove was saying, yes. There's a lot of excitement, especially on the recreation side. So I've been here since, 2003? And I feel like I came at the right place. This is exciting, and I can't wait for the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to, the education value of that area is tremendous. I mean, I come from a background of museum education, and just being out there, I could just see the interpretation opportunities for school kids, for the community. I think it could be really a draw from the region, because you said it's the only locks in Northern California. So, I mean, that's unique and very special, and so I definitely think it should be something considered, that we make it an interpretive center for the community and people to come visit and have a nice picnic lunch out there. I mean, it would be great. It's beautiful, but definitely keeping its historic integrity, I think, is vital.
Thank you.
Hi, Anthony Volkar, Arts Commission. I just wanted, I know there were a lot of questions from community members at the event, and I want to just commend the Parks area for the wonderful presentation you all did. But I know that one of the comments was a question about the changes to the South River Road area. I didn't know if you wanted to take an opportunity to address that. Because I think folks looking at this map and thinking about it as it is in the current state, maybe can't envision a park in that area.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about circulation, because that wasn't really the purpose of this commission, but they go hand in hand, right? You can't reuse without looking at how you're getting people to where you're going. So we are, as part of this visioning exercise, so this is one component, parks and open space. There's two other components, circulation and land use. And so we're looking at how do we address connectivity issues? Because really, it's not about automobiles. We're committed in this jurisdiction to connectivity, which means bikes, peds, looking at transit, potentially looking at streetcar. The Mike McGowan Bridge can handle a streetcar going over it. So circulation's a key component. In terms of South River Road, we have Village Parkway, which is south of the Mike McGowan Bridge. When that opens up, that will be creating a brand-new sort of arterial that runs along the waterfront. That will be an open opportunity for 6 to be converted into a trail. In terms of the industrial area, we have a right-of-way that varies between 60 and 80 feet in right-of-way. That is not what's represented out there currently today. We would have to go through a fairly extensive process of reclaiming our right-of-way, but it is ours to reclaim. We have not figured out yet how much capacity we need in that road. The Broadway Bridge feasibility study, which was approved by the council in December of 2015, talked a little bit about the traffic capacity that's needed associated with the Broadway Bridge. We essentially need a junior version of Jefferson, which really indicates that we need a 4-lane road. We need a 4-lane road. Now, we went to the council in October and talked about how do you do a 4-lane road and achieve all of these other objectives that you have, which are to get people on bicycles, to get people walking, to get people using streetcar and transit, and parking far away and walking to their multiple destinations. And so one of the tasks that we're undertaking right now, and I'm working with Jason McCoy, who's the project manager for Broadway Bridge on, is figuring out how to make sure that we're engineering our roads for all of these users and taking into consideration that traffic. So I can tell you that part of what we'll be talking about over the next year or two is what that circulation system will look like, what's the capacity, and how we are addressing these multitude of users. And so one of the comments that we got is, when Village Parkway opens, there's just going to be a ton of traffic. What's your plan? And our plan right now is to make a plan. I mean, that's the best plan that we have right now, is to really understand what the implications are of that, to figure out what the time frame is, not only for the Broadway Bridge, but one of the things that's not often understood is what's the time frame for relocating the rail. And the rail plays a big component in, sorry, Francisco, plays a big component in local circulation. Our general plan says rail is one of the major impediments to local circulation. And so we have to be looking at how do we address that need as well. And so the general plan, I can tell you, not only talks about widening South River Road, but also talks about looking at a new east-west connection at Stone Boulevard. And so I hope that answers your question
No, that
more
did.
than.
Would you also
ever
bring
know.
up the issue, there was a gentleman that was asking questions about the Army Corps and the relationship to the report, and you mentioned something about that there. Would you mind going over that again?
The question that I answered related to the general reevaluation report?
Yeah, there was a report.
Okay, I will do my best to answer that question. I believe the question someone asked was, how are we paying for these improvements, and what does this mean in terms of our assessments? Am I on the right? Okay, so we received a question from the public about that, and I don't work for West Africa, but I did my best to answer that question as though I was Greg Fabian, who's our flood protection manager. The general reevaluation report describes what the improvements are that the Corps is looking at for our entire system. And right now, the improvements that they're proposing are not particularly advantageous to reusing the facility. And so we want to begin this process of looking at what are the standards that the Corps is interested in achieving, and then what are we trying to achieve with the facility, and find a reasonable, costly, not too costly, but, cost-effective, that's the word I was looking for, approach to managing these, our local expectations with the Corps' expectations. Yes, the assessments that were passed could be paying for those improvements, but it's uncertain. We still have to complete the Southport EIP to really understand what's our next phase of flood protection. I think what we're focused on right now is understanding that for $2.5 million, we believe we can make the necessary retrofits to make that piece fit into the 200-year system. And so we'll be investigating perhaps an interim solution, which is the retrofitting the existing condition, and then perhaps a longer-term solution that maybe we can negotiate with the Corps on meeting these other recreational objectives. And so that's a little longer answer than I gave out there, but since I'm on the record, I'll give the more complete answer.
Thank you.
I just want to comment, I really appreciate your thoroughness on the project. I think that shows as we're hearing this presentation. I just want to say as well, the opportunity for the public to interact in this way was just, for me as a commissioner, I really appreciated that. For the folks that were not there, there was a very large turnout among the community members, and a lot of them were very engaged in what you were sharing, and so I think opportunities like that to continue in other areas related to the parks and other things with the city would just be great.
Thank you so much.
Commissioners? Dean, you good? Nancy? Okay, great. What a unique opportunity. And 2.5, was it?
2.5 for the initial retrofit
Right.
is what they estimate right now.
In the scope of the investment, the public, the private investment in flood control, that's a deal. I mean, that 2.5 million would be a deal, but that's a deal. And excellent work, both recognizing the value of historically and to the community. It was delightful to be out there and listen to residents that some of them had lived here all their lives, or they'd been here for 40 years, and they'd never seen it. It was a plea and a request, maybe at the beginning of the commission's process, that we find that, at least from the historic preservation piece of the arts, culture and historic preservation, we find a way to open up our assets to the community. And this project, both at Pioneer Bluffs and Stone Locks, it opens up a unique asset to the community in a way that has not been available since prior to cityhood, maybe ever. I don't know how it works, but I don't know how planes fly either, and I fly. But the mechanics of it, just from a mechanical engineering architecture standpoint, it's a stunning piece of mid-century modern architecture, and it's, thank you.
My pleasure.
And we have so many groups, we've heard from the Historical Society. I mean, I look at some of those cool old buildings and think if they had ground floor access to something with an observation deck, that they could really expand. I mean, it's been very generous that they've been in the community center, but that would be a diamond. That would be a jewel in this process. The idea to break the park resources into smaller parks that people would still enjoy and not have to go through a movie theater to get to, is a better, in my opinion, a better use of resources. And then to tie it all into the trail, to the river, in a way that up and down the Sacramento River, communities and towns have made big investments, but I think of towns like Reading or down along the river where they've opened up that asset to their residents, and the community loves it. There are tremendous opportunities for some cool public art. I hope you remember about the public art. So the planning, the city staff was commendable. It was under redevelopment then, but the patience in dealing with the old firehouse in the north part of town, I mean, that's been decades long, and it was yucky. And it's going to be amazing. And this has that potential. And so I'm not sure if from this combined commission, if what you need moving forward is an enthusiastic support of moving forward with the planning process. Is that what I heard that you need to have happen?
Absolutely. I was looking for just general comments and then the recommendations that are in the report on how we would move forward, even though it's kind of in the weeds and not particularly that exciting. It's a critical piece of us moving forward. So I was absolutely looking for, I think I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding yes, so that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, very enthusiastic.
I think it is exciting, excuse me.
Yeah.
Just as evidenced by the people that showed up today. People are very interested. That's always been a mystery. They've always said, what is that? What are they going to do with it? does it still work? All of those pieces. And I encourage you, when you write up the questions and answers that happened today for the website, that you put a little history of the buildings or that project in. People I heard a couple people saying, well, when was it built? And, what exactly did they do with it? And who owns it? Or
In the
who
60s
owned
and,
it?
in the 60s and not much.
Well, and just, I think that one answer we need, I've already got 2 people that have hit me up on my phone, is when's the last time a boat went through there?
So I heard from Dan Ramos, it was in 1960, it was cement. It got stuck on a sand barge, and they had to shove it through to the end down by the Sacramento River.
Dirt on the outside.
Yeah.
One, I'll just add to that too, and commenting on what you were saying, there was a question about the report, and so I don't know that there was an opportunity for folks that were just visiting with us beyond commissioners to provide comments. Like, comment cards would have been nice at the event, but that's obviously for future. But perhaps there's a mechanism that we could collect comments on this with the press release or announcement about the event, because there was a lot of success and I saw lots of pictures being taken. And as well, there was a request from some of the folks attending about getting this report that we're seeing here linked through there a little bit more directly, so they don't have to dig through commission pages to find it.
I'll take care of
That's a
that.
good idea.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. Well, great work.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Katie, when was the last time you got applause in these chambers, right?
I'm like, oh, I'm getting
Spend
a
a
little
moment with
emotional.
that.
Thank you.
Spend a moment with that, yeah. Thank you so much. Item number 4, consideration of the administrative policy for use of the city's barn event and program days. The Director of Parks and Recreation, Cindy Tuttle. And
Thank
she's
you.
there.
Thank you, Chairperson Seals, members of the commission. I am Cindy Tuttle, the Director of Parks and Recreation, and as she mentioned, this item is to seek your input on an administrative policy in regards to the use of the 10 event and program days that have been allocated to the city by virtue of a lease and sublease agreement with the owners of the barn. Earlier in June, we did go to the city council to get some general direction because there was a myriad of options and directions that we could have gone in looking at how to use the barn dates, and I won't go over those because they are contained in your staff report. The council did direct that we look at hosting city events or city-related events at the barn. That doesn't mean that it precludes the city from partnering with other agencies such as the Washington Unified School District to perhaps hold a graduation ceremony or other entities, the Chamber of Commerce, State of the City. I mean, these are just some that are coming to my mind. But again, to really use these 10 event dates for city events. Therefore, we did draft a draft administrative policy that is also attached to your staff report, which outlines the process for being able to allocate those 10 days and to be able to accumulate ideas and put those forward to the city council for final approval. And again, I won't go over the details of the administrative policy because it again is attached to your staff report. I also want to give you a little brief update on the barn and then again would welcome your input. There is going to be a press event this Friday, July 22nd at 10 a.m. For any of you that are available, we would love to have you join us at the barn as kind of a soft opening of the barn. The Parks and Recreation Department is currently processing a special events permit for multiple Friday nights at the barn with Off the Grid. You may know Off the Grid as the producer of the recent Riverwalk events every Sunday from 11 to 4 at the Riverwalk. They would now be doing a Friday night event at the barn from, I believe it's either 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening every Friday with, again, food options, wine and beer bar, and entertainment. We are currently feverishly working on putting issuing a tentative occupancy permit. The barn pods, as they're called, or the ends of the bridge of the barn, where the restaurant and bar are slated to go, are currently empty. They have not, those tenant improvements have not been done. Therefore, this temporary occupancy permit would be for the outside portions of the barn. They would bring in temporary restrooms, but allow events to begin happening there, to begin creating a sense of place and for folks to come down there and enjoy the riverfront and enjoy the barn, our new facility, and to take a load off, so to speak. So that gives you a brief update on the barn. And again, the purpose of this item is to seek your input on this administrative policy before we take it to council next month.
Commissioners,
I was just going to ask for clarification. So in the alternatives, it mentions a private event planner was another option. So are we to assume that if we move forward with this plan, the city's taking on the event planning, or what area of the business of events are we taking on as a city?
Deciding what events would happen, the city would still retain the option of being able to hire private event planners for events. So, for example, currently we do, I believe this is correct, and Chairperson Seals can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still within the 6 month, I'm new. So I believe that, for example, we contract with the Chamber of Commerce every year to put on the State of the City. So that type of option, we wanted to allow the flexibility for us to still be able to do that, to contract with either the chamber or some other outside organization to present a city event. Because sometimes the staff, just to be honest, we don't have the capacity to be able to put on some of these types of events. That's not what we do. So, yeah, we would still retain that ability to hire an outside agency to help us.
Commissioner Clower.
Are we deciding about these 10 days? Is that what we're here to
policy.
do? Well, the policy that covers these 10 days.
Correct. The administrative policy for these 10 days, that's correct.
Have you talked at all about weighting the requests? Would a nonprofit, like assigning points to a request, let's say you have 10 days and you get 40 requests. The screening process, would that be first come, first serve, or would it be if you're a nonprofit, or would it be if you're a private, you want to have an event for the community there? Have you talked about that at all?
Wouldn't those organizations be able to still use the event, just not on one of the 10 city days, right? I mean, they can
Correct.
still hire.
We
I'm
are
just
really
wondering how-
retaining these for city events. So, again, State of the City, the high school graduation, off-the-grid bicycle race. Once we develop the waterfront, maybe it's where the triathlon ends after everybody swam through the Deepwater Ship Channel and come up through the locks, stone locks, and ridden their bikes around the new trail and ended up at the barn.
I see.
Those types.
Commissioner Appreciation Night.
Yeah, Commissioner Appreciation
Appreciation Night. Yes.
So they are city-sponsored events. So there is the potential, I guess, that the city could partner with a nonprofit for a city-sponsored event. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, other than...
West Cyclocross comes to
Right, well,
mind.
the Gear Up or the cyclocross race, those are some. So it would have to be a city-sponsored event. I think in the unlikely event that we did get more than 10 dates, because, I can think that, the dig-in dinners and some things like that, then we should probably have to look at criteria. I know that there was criteria developed for the Rayleigh Field
Right, that's what I was thinking of.
dates, and I think we can easily pull from that existing administrative policy for the Rayleigh Fields dates, because they, again, I think it went through a process with all of you as well to establish that. So that would be a good thing to happen to us if we had so many events we wanted to have at the barn that we needed to establish a process, but absolutely, we could do that.
Okay. It's such a unique situation. It is a functioning piece of art situated on a public park. It's unique and stunning, so.
Madam Chair, just why I have you here, Cindy, is there anything currently scheduled at the barn? Any big events?
Yes, this Friday at 10 o'clock.
But is that it?
The off-the-grid events are scheduled and will begin.
Yes, so
Because there's a private entity, right, that's already scheduling things.
that is my
to happen.
understanding. There is a private event scheduled for July 28th, but it's private. The first public event, other than the press event, is for the special event permit that we're processing for, again, the off-the-grid events that would begin August 5th and continue every Friday night until
October, wasn't it?
October, I believe, yeah.
Is there any issues with the permitting and sound issues and things like that in that area with our past experience with stuff there?
Obviously, there hasn't been any issues yet because we haven't had any events at the barn. However, our municipal code 12.08 has very clearly defined the steps that need to be taken relevant to sound engineering, sound plans relevant if you're going to have amplified sound at an event. And depending on the size of the event dictates whether or not you have to have certain sound engineers and what your decibel levels are going to be. So there is a complete suite of requirements and additional options that are available to the city to try to control the sound issues.
But that's the existing policy. There's not a special policy that's been created for the opening of the barn in that area. It's just
No.
existing policy.
Their lease, their
Okay.
sublease agreement does have some additional information in it about sound, but primarily it refers to Municipal Code 1208.
Which
And-
was based on Rayleigh Field initially, correct? When they were going to have concerts there, I think.
Yeah. And I
that-
ask
that
because
is
I
all-
want concerts there. I want to see live music there.
It's zoned as part of the entertainment district.
That is correct.
And
Okay.
as such, issues like sound are a little more lenient than, say, if it were,
Well,
going to be at
remember, they've
streets,
had
yeah.
concerts over in that area already.
Yeah.
And
A
the
little
biggest
further up,
complaint we've
yes.
had is from the city of Sacramento, because the noise was a little bit louder than they wanted.
Right,
So they've had them the last 2 years in that same area,
right.
even though it wasn't a barn. So they're starting to get it kind of fine-tuned a little bit on what they can and can't do out there.
But it is, you are correct, it is, the entertainment district is designed for just that entertainment, and it does include amplified sound and concerts, and the sublease and the barn agreements are very, very clear. I think I actually included language, hopefully in your staff report, about the intent that we want people to use it, we want to have those types of venues there, and that was the whole purpose of having an entertainment district.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I noticed that you have a 45-day deal where the people that actually have the barn, if you have one of your 10 days or something like that, and something's not going, they have 45 days to cancel it if they see nothing. Is that normal?
Actually, this provision is that they cannot cancel in less than 45 days. So if the city schedules an event, the barn can cancel up to 45 days, but after 45 days, before the event, they cannot cancel the event unless it's some type of crazy emergency. And that's to protect the city from all of the planning costs of an event, and then all of a sudden, the week before, somebody pulling the plug, they're not allowed to do that. They can only cancel an event that the city has planned at the barn 45 days or more in advance.
But that looks like it's only one-sided too, though.
I'm sorry?
It seems like it's kind of one-sided. They could do that. Does the city have
Well,
any provisions?
the owner of the,
The owner of the barn can do that.
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
yeah, the city could probably cancel their event.
No, I mean, and the city, if you actually had 10 days, now, if you actually had something that was going to generate some money, and they come and say, no, we don't want it because they had some disagreement with the city, something to that nature. I'm saying, it looks like it's 45 days, but the owner's the one's doing it, and the city doesn't have, could get caught in a deal where they might have no say in it, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you mean they could, like, on the 46th day, they could come and just cancel an event?
Yep. I mean, that could happen.
That could happen, that's correct.
I'm just saying that, I've seen things like this happen in the past. Hopefully that wouldn't, but I'm just saying, if that 45 days is a normal thing.
We felt that it was enough time that if you had to find an additional venue or some other venue to move an event, that it would give the city enough time to either cancel the event, move the event. This was really a clause that we put in here to protect us from having the rug pulled out from us at the very last minute. So we thought that the 45 days would give our staff or an event planner enough time to reorganize the event or
Yeah, I'm
cancel
just
it.
curious, because I haven't never seen any in the past, a 45-day thing, and I've seen other musical events that the city used to perform way back when, so.
Yeah, I remember those.
I think Commissioner Clayton, is part of your question then, can they bump Can they bump a city day if they have a more lucrative offer, as long as they do it within, prior to 45
For
days?
45 days.
They could technically do that, yeah. They could technically do that. But the idea here, and per the sublease agreement, we're required to meet with the barn on a quarterly basis and to lock these dates in. So I don't know that it would be in the barn's best
I
interest.
can't imagine that would be a great idea.
Yeah, to be bumping a city event, considering the investment that the city has made into that facility.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're partners in that facility, and
Right.
so it's not like,
And that partnership, I think
Yeah.
Commissioner Clayton, is institutionalized in other documents and other language.
Yeah.
Because of
Yeah,
the
but I've
nature
seen
of
us
it.
getting other documents before, and they've went quite well, then it seems like after a while, they've kind of forgot about them. And so we end up having to sometimes go back to them again.
Great, thank
Unfortunately,
you.
that's been, on the commission too long, so.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for Ms. Tuttle? Do you need anything from us other than,
just the okay, the nod that you think it looks all right, and if you wanted any changes, I'm happy to, take those changes as well.
Nod.
Great.
I just see nodding heads.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item number 5, consideration of the draft CB, I could never say this, CDBG 2016-2020 Consolidation Plan, and the 2016-2017 Annual Action Plan. Louise Collis.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Louise Collis. I'm a Senior Program Manager in the Department of Economic Development and Housing here with the city. And we made a presentation to the Parks, Recreational, and Intergenerational Commission in December, I think it was, about this issue, got some comments. Now we're coming back with a lot more specifics. CDBG, also known as Community Development Block Grant.
Easy for you to say.
I know.
Yeah.
Is funding that comes from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, for HUD. HUD operates this program, and small cities, if you have less than 50,000 in population, have to go to the state for their funding. So HUD gives it to the state, and then the state allocates it from there. Once you hit the magic 50,000 number, then your jurisdiction becomes what they call entitlement, which means you're entitled to get a little piece of the pie every year. So that amount may go a little up or down a little bit each year, depending upon congressional allocations and the HUD budget, but it usually stays fairly the same. The benefit of this is that when we were under the state small cities program, we were only able to apply for grants that scored well under the city's competitive process. As an entitlement jurisdiction, the idea is HUD lets jurisdictions decide how to best use funds themselves. And so what we are required to do is a 5-year consolidated plan that says, over a 5-year period, here's the goals we want to accomplish with our CDBG funds and other funding. It's not just for CDBG, but it says, here's goals for low-income neighborhoods, low-income residents. Here's what we would like to accomplish in a 5-year period. And then each year, when you have your annual allocation, once you know how much that money is going to be, you do your annual action plan that says, and this year, our little bit of money is going to go in these particular activities. Are you all still seeing the pictures on the screen?
We're seeing you.
Okay. Oh, well, let's please put something else up. Thank you. Okay. So HUD has what's called the CDBG primary objective, to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanded economic opportunities for low-income households. And HUD has very specific definition of what it considered low income. So in your packet, one of the exhibits shows those income levels, which, for example, for a family of 4 would be a family under $59,300 annually. Now, most of the time, we spend our CDBG funds on activities targeted to lower income, people at below that income level, but that's the maximum by HUD regulation. In addition, there are what are called the 3 national objectives. So you have a whole wide array of CDBG eligible activities that you can do, but they must serve one of 3 national objectives. And the primary objective is to benefit low and moderate income households. 70% of your funds have to go to that objective. But you can also do slum and blight elimination, or what HUD calls urgent need, which is different than what we may think of as urgent need. It's things that you cannot plan for. So it would be flood or some kind of unexpected, unanticipated emergency that was affecting a low-income neighborhood. Let's see here. In the past, we have actually West Sacramento's been very successful through the state program. We were quite competitive. We have a good, solid history of performing on our grants, so we do quite well. So any of you that live in Arlington Oaks or near that area might remember that in around 2002, 2003, the septic tanks were failing in that neighborhood. We had a cease and desist order on that neighborhood because effluent was going directly into the river. So they had to go, we hooked those neighborhoods up to the sewer system. So CDBG funds were used. We had to do income surveys of everybody in that neighborhood, and if it was an owner-occupied unit with a low-income family, we were able to use CDBG funds to pay for their hookups. So I think that was like $12,000 or $14,000, some in that area for each of those households. I believe it was 218 households that we assisted. In the past, we've done business loans, and business loans are allowable if they are projects that are creating new jobs for income-eligible households. So we've done the bowling alley, when they expanded their restaurant, is one of them in this neighborhood. We've done a number of those. We have a first-time homebuyer assistance program. Sometimes we've funded that actually out of a number of different funding sources, but we have done some with CDBG. So what that does is assist low-income buyers with down payment assistance. I think we've done probably 65 homes since that program was initiated in 2004. Multifamily housing rehab, so some of our affordable housing complexes we have rehabbed with CDBG funds, and single-family owner-occupied housing rehab. We did many of those over the years. CDBG can also be used for planning studies. So there was a homeless study, some of you may have seen that in 2013. The city's housing element, a portion of that we've done, we did a windshield survey of housing conditions in the low-income neighborhoods is what we were able to do with CDBG for that. A mobile home park study in 2007. The city's GIS system and on our website was developed with a state CDBG planning grant. The SEDS, which is the, now I got to see if I can do it, Comprehensive Economic Development Survey, right?
Yes.
Strategy. So it was our ED strategy that was done in 2006 or 7, I believe. Since that time, the city has come under a new SEDS, which was the Next Economy that was done on a regional basis in the Sacramento region. And then we did a farmer's market study. I don't know if you realize that, but that was kind of part of the initial planning for the farmer's market was done with a CDBG planning grant. So CDBG funds in West Sacramento have been used in a wide variety of areas. So now we get down to that big, heavy document that came in your packet. I do have to apologize for that. It is a HUD-required format, and it is required by every jurisdiction in the United States that gets CDBG. The state of California gets $130 million. They use almost exactly the same format that we have to use. Sacramento City and County, they put their money together along with some of the smaller cities in Sacramento County. So they get like $15 million. They use the same format that we use. So it's a rather hefty document for the amount of money that we receive. But if you want the money, you've got to do what HUD requires. The reason it's called a consolidated plan is that there's actually 4 block grant programs in HUD. There's CDBG, HOME, ESG, which is the Emergency Solutions Grant. That's mainly like homeless shelters and that sort of thing. And HOPWA, Housing for Persons with AIDS. So, for example, in Sacramento, the reason they get $15 million is they're getting all 4 of those funding sources. Again, we have to still answer the same questions that they do. Oops, wrong one. And that format requires us to develop goals for the 5 years and to designate them either being low priority or high priority. So based on input that we received from the Parks Commission and the Economic Development and Housing Commission and outreach to service providers in the low-income communities, public hearings that we have conducted, these are our proposed goals for the 5-year plan. 2 high priority goals to reduce the impact and incidence of homelessness in West Sacramento by continuing to fund our homeless outreach coordinator position that was hired fall of 2014 as a result of the CDBG planning grant the prior year, and also to seek more housing solutions linked with supportive services. And the second high priority goal is to complete actions that are in the Washington Neighborhood Strategy that was completed last year with a HUD grant from a different HUD program called the Community Challenge Grant. What that does is it seeks to help us prepare the Washington neighborhood for high-density infill development, which we know is coming, but we just didn't know what that meant as far as what kind of city infrastructure was going to be needed to support the type of development we would like to see with streetcar and transit-oriented and that sort of thing. But it also looks at the fact that there are low-income folks in that neighborhood who may not be prepared for those changes, and what can we do so they can take advantage of changes in their neighborhood, advantage of the new jobs that are going to come in, that sort of thing, rather than being hurt by increasing property values and rents that we would also expect to see at the same time. The 2 low priority goals are to strengthen economic opportunities for low-income households by continuing our CDBG-funded micro-enterprise program, and to support programs providing job readiness skills, especially like, for example, in that Washington neighborhood. There's going to be jobs coming in there, and there are going to be people that need jobs that are living there, but they may not have a match in their education level or job training level. So that's what we would like to look at. Because if you have a transit-oriented neighborhood, but you have people who have to go elsewhere to find a job, it doesn't do you a lot of good. You want them to be prepared for the jobs that are coming to their neighborhood. And then finally, we want to increase fair housing law compliance in West Sacramento. We're going to do some, actually coming up pretty soon, we're going to start some workshops both for tenants and for our landlords, and expand on our marketing of fair housing services here in West Sac. This slide, I'm not going to read them all, but this is just an example of things that are in that Washington strategy that could possibly be CDBG funded, depending upon whether the actual project meets one of the 3 national objectives. Does it serve low-income folks primarily? Is it a slum blight elimination, or is it an urgent need activity? So, for example, with infrastructure, if it's infrastructure for a business, in order for it to be CDBG eligible, that business would have to be creating jobs for low-income people. It couldn't be just any business. So CDBG has a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, but it can do a lot of good. It's not the only funding source that we have, though, for doing these types of activities. So our federal funds, we expect $248,000 this first year. And we do have program income that comes in every year. So we have activities that, for example, down payment assistant loans. They're deferred loans, but when they sell that house, the city gets the money back. Or our single-family rehab loans, those sorts of things. Those are the ones that we get, and our business loans. Those are the ones that we primarily get our program income from, but there may be a few others. For the next little over a year, we'll be finishing off our final state grant, so we actually get to kind of double dip this year. It's kind of nice. And so for this particular fiscal year, we have a little over $300,000 we're paying for our city's homeless coordinator. So he is out there working in the camps. He actually works out of the police department. So he works directly with the police, because the police actually have a lot of times the most contact with our homeless community of any other city employee, except maybe every now and then some of the parks folks. So we have him working out of the police department so that the police have an option other than just throwing someone in jail for being homeless. Instead, they have our homeless coordinator who goes out and tells the person, hey, you can't camp here. We need to find other options for you. And that's been actually working pretty well. It doesn't happen immediately, but he is able to get people into services. Sometimes it takes a little time, takes a lot of effort on his part, but he does a really good job. We pay tuition assistance at the Learning Ladder across the street, the city's preschool program for low-income kids. So we usually have about 12 or 14 kids every year that we're assisting with that. Our micro-enterprise program, if you come over here on our Wednesday night, there'll be, I think we have an English class going in one room and a Spanish class going in the other room. And these are low-income families that either have a small business or want to start a small business, and we're giving them business counseling and education. They learn about what does a financial statement look like, and why do I need one, and how can it help me. They learn about marketing techniques. They learn about different legal structures. Do I want a partnership? Do I want an LLC? We don't make recommendations on what's best for them, but we explain what those things are so that then they can talk to an accountant or attorney if they need to make decisions, but at least they know what the questions are they need to look at. We also do micro-enterprise grants, so if they go through a 6-week session of classes and complete a business plan, they can apply to the city for up to $5,000 matching grant, 3-to-1. So they have to put in a third of the money, and we can provide up to $5,000 for something for their business. We've got one underway right now it's a couple that had been doing house cleaning. They were homeless when they started out. I think they went to the classes last winter. They were homeless. They were living out of their car. Now, after working with the business counselor, they were able to raise their rates and increase their income to the point that they rented a place to live. And now they're going to apply for a grant because they have a car that's not in very good shape, and so they need more reliable transportation. They want to buy a van. That's going to be a big financial impact on their business and on their family, so they're really excited. I'm looking forward to getting that application in. We have some state CDBG program income set aside. Well, actually, most of that's gone. The public infrastructure for West Gateway Place, I think we've spent most of that now, but it was originally $1.1 million. The project that's going in right around the corner over here that you see going on the corner of Gateway and Grand, just before you hit the Tower Bridge, that's an affordable housing complex. It's going to provide 77 units of housing. So CDBG cannot be used for new construction of housing. That is one. It's not designed to go out and build new cities. It's designed to fix inner city issues of aging neighborhoods. So you can't do new construction of housing, but you can do infrastructure. So we're paying for the infrastructure. I don't know how many of you remember, there used to be a big square box thing in the middle of that parcel. That was a sewer pump station for the storm sewer. So without that storm sewer, that section of Tower Bridge Gateway would flood every single year. So that pumps the storm sewer water out. And so we had to move it so that we could build on that parcel. So it was kind of expensive infrastructure on that project. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bright Park Phase 2. The next phase is going in right next to the Disney playground. We've got CDBG money in addition to city money in that project. Several other sources up there too. We get state home money. The new State Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant, that's a cap and trade grant. We got funding under cap and trade under the first round, so we were very, very pleased. We were the only jurisdiction in the Sacramento region to get funded in that first round last year. And the city has a housing trust fund. Developers, when they develop new market rate housing, are required to set aside a percentage of units to be affordable. Or they can request for an alternative, and the alternatives, one of those that's allowed is to pay an in lieu fee. So we have money in the Housing Trust Fund. CDBG, yes.
Louise, over here.
Do you want to go back?
No.
Okay.
But I am wondering, is this, so this is a required reporting, yes, for the grant application. And you're curious about comments to staff. So could I, at this point, could I see if anybody has any comments at this point? Because you've given us a lot of information. It's a lot of information.
It is a lot of information. How about I'll take questions at this point, and
Yeah.
we'll save comments for, till we get to the end?
Questions. Okay, questions? Everybody's got it?
I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
Well, you know, at least the Parks Commission folks have seen some of this already, so I do apologize, so they're probably a little bored, they're probably thinking, well, we know this already, and I apologize, but I knew that the Arts Commission had not seen this
Right.
well. Matthew knows a little of that, because he was on our Housing Commission for many years, but it is a lot. It is a lot.
So at this point, where it feels like if we're moving into data, maybe, are there any questions about the programs that she talked about, or the four goals for this upcoming cycle?
So I just had one quick question. On the first-time homebuyer assistance program, how is that working out, seeing that the values in West Sac are starting to go up almost every quarter?
You know, we have to watch that. We have moved the maximum of allowable subsidy up and down over the years because the housing market's gone up and down. Right now, our maximum subsidy is $50,000 or 35% of the purchase price, whichever is less. And so right now, actually, we just looked at that. We figured there's probably plenty of homes in like the northern side of town, Brighton, Broderick, and Washington, that a low-income family could purchase. It'd be a lot more limited right now in Southport. There's some homes that probably would be affordable, but it would be more limited. If it gets to the point where it looks like there's just not enough housing stock, then we would have to decide, do we give more money, or do we close down the program? And we've done both of those at times.
Okay, thank you.
Is any of this funding available to the West Sacramento Housing Authority?
The Yolo County, or West Sac Housing Development Corporation?
Yes.
Okay, the West Sac Housing Development Corporation is a nonprofit housing development corporation.
Are they
so-
eligible to work with you for any of this funding?
Absolutely. It depends on what they're doing. So, you know, if they were doing acquisition and rehab to develop an affordable housing complex, yes, they actually are partners in the West Gateway Place project.
Right.
That's got 1.1 million right now. So, yeah, absolutely. And they've actually gotten state CDBG over the years for, I'm trying to think. There was one project that was rehabbed, I think it was just before my time.
Great.
So nonprofits are eligible for the city to grant them funds, but it depends on what they're doing. What the activity they're doing
They
has
still
to
have
be
to meet those same three
eligible.
criteria.
Pardon?
They still have to meet those same three criteria in their
Exactly,
projects.
exactly. They have to
Any
meet
other
all the HUD
questions?
requirements.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yes. Do you know if the Bright Park will have a dog park put into it? mentioned
This
that.
second
So-
phase that we're funding is not, I don't know, that might be a question for Cindy, actually. I don't know about the
Wanna get
whole plan.
Too off topic, if anybody knows.
It's okay, yeah, the Bright Parks Master Plan does include a dog park
All
component.
right.
However, Phase 2 does not include the development of that dog park, but it is part of the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Phase 2 is a covered pavilion, what they're calling a sports court, so it's a paved area for, and parking and restrooms. So I'm not really going to get into the specifics of the data, Denise, because it's just, like I said, we do the same data analysis as Sacramento or LA County.
It's small print.
And it's,
So there's pages of it.
I can't change the
That's all right.
The
No,
data
it's-
it's a HUD format, and I can't change it.
This is masterful work here.
And each of those questions, I only get 4,000 characters to respond to. So some of them are very small, very narrow questions, and you only need a few sentences. Some are very, very broad questions, and you've still got to limit yourself. So it was interesting. This is the first time I've done CDBG entitlement at times in the past, but this was the first time under this new format, so this was kind of fun. A lot of the data that you see in there, all those charts after charts after charts, are census tract or city-wide census information, and I just wanted to give you a visual of the census tracts in West Sacramento. So both these maps that you're seeing here before you, I think one of them is median household income and the other one is rate of poverty. You can see it jumps out at you pretty quick that the two lowest income census tracts are the Washington neighborhood, which is 101.01, and the neighborhood surrounding the port, and it goes north like Glide Avenue and Walnut on the northeast corner. So you'll see a lot of information in there about those two census tracts, because those would be the two that would be, that CDBG funds would be most impactful in. Just to let you know that we have those 4 goals that we're proposing. HUD also requires yet another document called an Assessment of Fair Housing, or an AFH. And this is a new requirement, so most jurisdictions haven't even done theirs yet. We're going to be required to do ours within 9 months of HUD notifying us that our data is ready, because they haven't given us the data that we have to now analyze yet. So probably next year, sometime next year. And it will require us to amend the consolidated plan if needed to address the issues that come up in the AFH. So the consolidated plan is a living document. It's not set in, it's supposed to be a plan that we're following, but there will be oftentimes adjustments to it over the 5 years. We are considering partnering with our regional partners. We've talked to Sacramento City, County, Citrus Heights, Roseville, Woodland, and Davis about partnering on the assessment of fair housing, because if there's an issue with landlords don't buy just generally in one city. They usually have properties all over. Issues that people are facing don't stop at jurisdictional lines. They're usually a regional issue. So we think that would make sense, and HUD is encouraging this for the first time, so HUD is probably going to be working with us on this if we decide to go that route. So that's the end of my presentation.
Oh, gosh, sorry. I just saw this data and I thought, well.
I was going to go back to this screen, because I think this might be, what we're here for this evening is just your comments on the proposed goals of the 5-year plan, and well, I kind of skipped right over that. The fact that the $428,000 this year will be allocated to an extension of the Riverwalk Park Trail. Currently, it's paved most of the way, but it is not paved from the I Street Bridge up to the boat ramp. So commuters and bikers and people that are out there enjoying the river, it's not safe for people to bike along that unpaved area, especially commuters early morning and late in the evening when it's dark and there's no lighting, and they're on gravel on top of the levee. So we want to improve that. We want to put lighting, we want to put safety measures, we want to put, pave it. It'll be ADA accessible. It will also have an ADA accessible ramp going up to the I Street Bridge.
The new one or the old one?
Both.
Oh.
We're going to plan for both. $428,000 in CDBG is not doing all that. So the city is coming in with at least 3 times that amount of local funds. So we do have some city money that's set aside, but we're going to fill the gap with the CDBG. That'll probably be used in the early phases. There's a lot of engineering, design, and a lot of approvals that are needed. So it's going to have environmental review. It's going to have to be approved by Department of Water Resources and Army Corps of Engineers and all sorts of things like that. So that's probably where the CDBG funds will be used and those things.
I have a question. So is that considered a park improvement, or is that considered flood control?
It's not going to address flood because the levee addresses the flood. This is an improvement on top of the levee. But yeah, it's considered a park improvement, like Bright Park. It is CDBG eligible because that is a low-income census tract, and it's primarily serving the residents of that census tract. Other people use that bike trail, probably coming from further west, but we found that most people that are coming from the west side of town generally use West Capitol Avenue. They don't go up and all the way around. There are probably some that do, but most of the time they come along the bike trail along West Cap. You see them out here, scads of them every morning. But mainly it's used by the residents of that census tract, or Bright, which is also a low-income census tract, not quite as low, but also low-income area. So that's why it qualifies as CDBG. And the fact that we have so many state-funded activities in this first year, it's not like we're ignoring the needs of low-income people. We're doing homelessness outreach, we're doing microenterprise assistance, we're doing preschool tuition, we're doing fair housing counseling. I'm missing one. So there's a lot going on with our CDBG funds. It's just with our federal funds this first year, that is a project that is CDBG eligible, and we felt like that would be really helpful. It's also timely because with the new bridge going in, we need to improve the ADA access that will be leading up to that bridge in order to get the federal grant for the I Street Bridge. So it's going to help us with some of that.
So will Riverwalk Park be continued north as well? Does the city own that property?
We own most of it. That's another thing that this is going to have to happen. There's actually small slivers here and there that we don't own, so we're going to have to do some property acquisition.
Sorry.
So that park is, I don't think slated for to turn into it's not going to have swing sets on it, you know?
Right.
It's going to remain
It could remain
undeveloped.
unimproved, city-owned property along that trail.
Correct. But it's very lovely to bike. It's very pretty.
It is pretty. Yeah. Questions?
So I'd like to hear any comments or questions you have about our proposed goal for the 5-year plan or the use of funds for the Riverwalk Park.
So I'm excited to see that, reducing the impact and incidence of homelessness is high priority. And I just had a question on the homeless outreach coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Is there emergency housing if you find somebody that needs housing on an emergency basis? Is that something that this coordinator can do?
Yes, actually. He does have access to, programs or county programs or nonprofits. I was actually talking to him the other day. The county has funding for families with children. They can always get emergency funding to put them into somewhere, even if it's one of the motels for a few nights till they find something better. There are also other, like unaccompanied youth, like homeless youth under the age of 24. There's funding for that. So there's various categories. Every funding source has its own restrictions. So when I say yes for a lot of people. There's a few people that are more challenging. But the city also pays a portion of the overhead at the shelter in Woodland, Fourth and Hope, used to be called the Wayfarer Center. So that is also another option. Because we pay a portion of that, we have the right to use some of those beds. There's also beds for persons with mental health, emergency mental health crisis beds, those sorts of things. And the great thing about having a homeless coordinator is he works with all those organizations all the time. He knows what's out there, so he can link people up very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Louise, are these funds, is public art considered blight remediation?
Blight remediation is usually you're removing something and replacing it with something better. So if you just have a street corner that's not pretty and you're putting some art and really improving it, that's not necessarily blight. Blight has to be, for CDBG, it has to be something structural. So
There were an ugly water tower and it came down?
if there was a
And you put a
dangerous,
better structure up, is that considered?
if there was a dangerous water tower,
A dangerous water tower?
just because it's ugly does not mean it's blight. There's unfortunately, but it has to have some kind of health, safety, impact on the community.
Great. Commissioners? Any further questions? So the request from us, it considered that maybe public art could be a piece of something. It's always been amazing, the number of programs and the effectiveness of those programs with really not goo-gobs of money. Yeah, it's been a tremendous job. And now that we hit the magic 50,000 and we have more resources, it will be exciting to see the successes that you have with it.
Public art would be allowable only in conjunction with another project that is CDBG eligible. So let's say, for example, Bright Park, we're putting in $200,000 into that little addition to Bright Park. If public art was one element of that park project, we could fund it with CDBG. If all we were doing is putting in public art, that would probably not be eligible.
So then it might be reasonable to request that our fellow commissioners that sit on the Parks Commission keep that in mind moving forward in the north part
But
of
just
town.
remember, we only have a finite amount of money, so, you've got to look at the trade-offs of what's going to get you, what's going to be the most impactful, and so this is not something that I didn't design it, but, and I'm not sure it's even designed yet, because we have to do the environmental review, but those are the kinds of, there are some public art elements that would be CDBG eligible, but a lot of things are not.
Just good information to have. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So then, did you get the comments that you had hoped for? Did you get the feedback?
I'm not sure I have positive or negative comments, so.
You're doing a great job with this. This is a huge Herculean undertaking that you have to go through every year.
Well, the consolidated plan, which is the majority of this document, is 5 years, but it may have to be amended a few times, but that won't be very major. The annual action plan is like the last 25 pages. That's an annual activity.
Well, and
then we'll have to do the fair housing piece.
And the effectiveness of what you do with city staff does with the funding has been incredible, really. Thank you.
West Sacramento's done, we've done, as a city, I think we're really targeted with our funding, and we're very strategic and
Creative.
really try and squeeze every penny out of a grant.
Great, thank you.
I was just going to add, sorry, I was going to say, if you're looking for comments, I think, if I'm looking at it from the community's perspective, I think there's still a lot of comments out there about West Capitol Avenue and just feeling like if there's an area where there needs some renovation, and I'm not seeing that, but I know that this is a greater policy with implications for the entire city. So I see a lot that you're doing there, but I know from a community aspect, I've consistently seen West Capitol brought up in an area of continued improvement for the whole city, and not just in relation to this, but other projects as well. And then if I can add, just for Daniel or for the clerks, the PowerPoint presentations were great tonight. If it would be possible, they're a little different than what we have in our packets. If we could distribute those out afterwards, that'd be great. I appreciated all the information you provided.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because this is a special meeting, there's not an agenda item for future items. You'll deal with that in individual and regularly scheduled commission meetings. So with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Whoop, Bert.
Point of order, please. Chairperson Seals, may I have a point of order?
Yes.
There was not an item on the agenda for this, and there was not an opportunity to do this, but on behalf of the Parks and Recreation staff, we want to recognize our chairperson, Dee Seals' wonderful commitment to this community. As you all know, she's going to be retiring from the Chamber of Commerce. However, the good news is that she is going to stay as our chair of the Arts Commission. We're very happy about that. However, we did want to just give you a little
Thank you so much.
on the honor of your retirement.
Thank you so much.
Come down and have yoga with you.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It means a great deal. Thank you. It's an amazing staff, and I appreciate it's great to work with you on this commission. It's been extraordinary to work with you on a professional level. So all of you, all of these people. Yeah. So thank you very much.
On that note, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention? Any noes? Adjourn.